Good morning. Can you all scoot a little bit closer to me so I can see all of you? Thank you. All right, I'm going to read you a very short story. So can you listen really carefully while I read you a really short story? Jesus was going around to all the towns and villages, teaching in their synagogues, preaching the good news of the kingdom, and healing every disease and sickness. What was Jesus doing? He was healing all the sicknesses, that's right, and taking care of people. When he saw the crowds, he felt compassion for them. Now, compassion is a big, important word, and it means that you suffer with somebody. That doesn't sound very nice, does it? Suffering. Nobody likes suffering, but it means that when we know that somebody is hurting or sad or lonely, we feel like they feel. So you know how it feels like if somebody else maybe falls down and gets hurt, but you've fallen down and gotten hurt before too, so you know how it feels, right? But compassion means we don't just feel for other people, it makes us want to do something to help them. So if you see somebody fall down, you don't just think, oh, I feel sad for them. What do? You help them up. That's exactly right. And that's what Jesus told the disciples to do. He said, there's all these people who need healing and who need to hear about Jesus. And there are people who have a special job of telling them about Jesus and of helping them feel better and of helping them have food. And did you know that that is our job? Jesus said, the harvest is plentiful. There's lots and lots of people who need help and need to hear about Jesus. And we are the laborers. We get to be Jesus' special workers who get to tell people about Jesus and help them feel better. So do you think we can do that today? Yep. Do you think if you see somebody that is hurting or needs somebody that you can feel like they feel and then do something to help them? Can we do that? All right, awesome. Let's all pray together, okay? Dear Jesus, thank you for showing compassion to us so we can show compassion to others. We love you and we pray in your holy name. Amen.
Well, I'm happy to introduce to you this morning my good friend, the Reverend Jay Height. Jay and I have been working together for several years now. When I was a district superintendent, I began to learn of all the great ministries that Shepherd Community Center does on behalf of our sister denomination, the Church of the Nazarene. They too are Wesleyan, as we are, share that same theology and faith. And it's been a great joy to get to know Jay, and we've worked together. He even graciously invited me to perform John Wesley for the leaders of their denomination a year or so ago, and we share many commitments together. Jay has been the executive director of Shepherd Community Center. Now, if you don't know where Shepherd is, it's in the 4100 block of East Washington Street in an old building that was formerly the Sahara Grotto, part of the Shrine organization, and they have transformed that into an amazing place of ministry. I hope someday we'll take a group down there to see all the amazing things they're doing there. Jay's been there since 1998, so 20 years now he's transforming the East Side. And here's their mission statement. I thought it was really powerful. Here's the mission of Shepherd Community: to break the cycle of poverty on the Near East Side of Indianapolis by engaging and empowering the community to cultivate healthy children, strong families, and vibrant neighborhoods through a Christ-centered approach. Jay has degrees from Indiana Wesleyan and from Wright State University, and he's married to Jane, who's here today. Jane, would you stand so we can recognize you? This is his lovely wife, Jane. Would you welcome her? Thank you. She's a nurse by profession, but she's a wonderful caregiver and the mom of 5 great kids and one wonderful grandson, Zane. All of their children are involved in full-time Christian ministry. What an incredible witness that is. And so I'm delighted. I don't want to take any more of his time. I'm delighted to welcome the Reverend Jay Height. Would you welcome him too? Thank you, brother.
Good morning. Well, I think my greatest achievement will be recognized on Tuesday. Jane and I celebrate our 30th anniversary, and so she deserves a medal, putting up with me for 30 years. And you understand why that what she does during the day now is she works with 3-year-olds. Being married to me qualifies her to work with 3-year-olds, and so she works in our preschool. Just a little bit about our family. Our son and daughter-in-law, Jeremy and Ritu, and grandson, Zane, are serving as missionaries in the country, in West Africa, in Dakar, Senegal. And so they're 5 hours away. We've 5 hours not away, 5 hours ahead of us, so we are able to FaceTime, and we're thankful for technology, but it's not the same, and we look forward to when we get to see them again. They're to return home in the fall of 2019, and so we're praying for them, proud of what they're doing in the work in West Africa. Our second daughter, Jenna, is married to Edson Solores, and they both serve at Shepherd. Edson is our business director. Jenna works with the 4-year-olds, and she's the teacher of the 4-year-old class in our preschool. And then our youngest, Jill, is married. They got married in September, and married to Ryan Farmer. They live in Frankton, Indiana, in that metropolis. So she went from living her whole life in the Near East Side of Indianapolis to living in a town of 1,100, and she finds out it's a little different than the Near East Side. And she works, she commutes 3 days a week and works from home 2 days, does our marketing, and her husband is youth pastor in Alexandria. So that's a little bit about us. We are from Ohio. Jane and I met at Wright State University in a interpersonal communications class. She was transferring to Wright State from Miami of Ohio, and I was there, and I was the studious one, I'm sure. And I noticed this cute girl, and she's still as beautiful as ever. And so I'm thankful for my family, and that's a lot of who I am. Is my family. And so Jane and I have served together. Actually, just one correction. We came here in 95. I became the director in 98 and have served there at Shepherd Community in the Near East Side of Indianapolis. It's a place that you probably have read a lot about or seen in the news. It's a place known by its statistics. And what I want you to know is those statistics have names and faces. And the prophet Jeremiah spoke to them when he said, I know the plans I have for you, plans for you to succeed and to prosper. And so we live out with our neighbors. That's where we live, work, and worship, except for today we came up here. And our purpose is to live Christ's love out to our neighbors. And so on any given day, about 350 children will be in the programs of Shepherd Community. We have what we call our continuum of care that starts while a mother is still pregnant, and we'll work with that mother and child until that child is in college, through college, and into adulthood. We work with both the first and the second generation. So let me just tell you a little bit of what that means. The infant mortality rate of the Near East Side is equivalent to most third world countries. And so we are working with IU Medical Center to try and do an outreach to pregnant women in our neighborhood to try to stop that horrible trend of infant mortality. It's way too high. It doesn't need to be that, and we want to try to help. And so we're reaching out, and then after that, when a mother gives birth to a child, we stay engaged with that mom for the first 3 years of that child's life through a program we call Project Jordan, which is a very special program to our family. It's a program that is named for someone who was very special in our life, a young girl that we tried to adopt, and tragically that fell apart. And so we want to help birth moms know how to care for their babies. Many times it's a lot of the health issues are because of the lack of nurturing, and parents think they're doing the right things. I tell the story, one time a mother came in, the baby was just a few days old, and Jane was talking to that mother, and the baby was crying, and she said, you don't pick up a crying baby. And my wife said, oh, no, that's not true. You should pick up the baby and comfort the baby. And she had the blanket laying on her. And so Jane was able to show her how to swaddle the baby. I call it baby origami. I would need duct tape or something to do the same thing that she could do. You know, It's just something about being a mom. And so we want to work with those birth moms and their babies to help the kids get started well into life. We know the first 9 months of that child's life are critically important in the development. Then we have our preschool with 3s and 4s, helping our kids get started well. And a majority of our kids who start into that program are Spanish speaking. And so we want to help them acquire the English skills. And so Jane is in with the 3-year-olds each day. And so we want to help them. And then we actually have a school that goes all the way through 5th grade. At the same time, we then do after school, both in the local IPS school, School 58. We do a lot of work at that school, and we also work and have staff inside of Harsherman and inside of Tech and inside of Howe, working with the kids in our neighborhood and working alongside our different educational partners to help them have the same opportunity. And so then we're going to continue to work with that student until they're in middle school and then in high school. We work with them all year round, so we have lots of kids in our summer programs, and they get to do a lot of exciting things. Our high schoolers always take a week-long bus trip somewhere in the United States. Jane and I used to go on those trips, but we aged out, and we determined that that's something for someone much younger than us to experience. And I'll just tell you one story. We went into a Holiday Inn. It was in Washington, D.C. I had a young kid in my he was going to be in my room, and I always gave him the rules. You know, you don't ever touch Pastor Jay's bed. You definitely don't go swimming and then jump on Pastor Jay's bed. And I told him, as an ordained pastor, I could lead them to Christ and send them to him quickly if they jumped on my bed. And if I'm in the bed, you don't jump on the bed. And one young kid went in, he said, Pastor Jay, they left stuff in the bathroom. I said, what do you mean? And I go in there. He had never stayed at a motel in his life. And so he said, these towels and all of this shampoo. And I said, the motel, it was a Holiday Inn, they give it to us to use. And he's like, do I got to do the laundry? And I'm like, no. It's always neat to help them experience life in a different way. We also work with the parents and have several programs to help our parents and to work in the community. You may have seen a story. It has been somewhat covered about a police officer and a paramedic. They're on our payroll. It's a team that we put out that they're out dealing with issues of our neighborhood. We recognize the challenges of the Near East Side, and we're trying to address those. While we're working with over 500 families on a daily basis, 350 kids, we are trying to impact the neighborhood that they live in. And so we are thankful that a few years ago, the police chief, Troy Riggs, came and he said, we need your help. This area, your area right here, it's Sherman in New York, is the 3rd most violent area in the city. And I want you to know at the close of 2017, there had been 0 homicides in that area. We believe God can change it. We are not going to police our way out of these issues of our city, the opioid epidemic. It is really the work of the church, because we can instill hope and a future, and we can help change behavior with the hope of Jesus Christ, and that's what we're trying to live out. So we have this police officer and this paramedic, and they're out each day. You may have seen that they were on the news this week because they're the ones who went into a home and found this dog that had been horribly mistreated, and were able to get help for the dog, and the dog is recovering. And I told him, I said, well, if this was your only story of hope, I'd be a little discouraged. But for that dog, it's great news. That little puppy, he's cute. But we know so many lives that have changed because of this intervention, that they're able to open the doors into the community and let them know that there are police officers and paramedics who care. And so now we're getting referrals from other officers and other, the fire department and other paramedics, so that we can go into a home and try to bring other needs and help them address those issues with other services, whether it's our budget counselor or whether it's our benefits or our jobs coach, and helping them understand that there is someone who cares. The real epidemic that we have in our world today is loneliness. And these other challenges are all lagging indicators of the true challenge. And I want you to know that Jesus Christ won that at the day of Pentecost when he said we can go out and we can change a world with the power of the Holy Spirit, right? And we want to be faithful to that task. So those are just some of the things that we're trying to do. We're a free tax site, so we're helping people do their taxes. And we have this food co-op, and one of the things that we do each month, is we distribute 1,000 dozen eggs. I want you to know that's a lot of eggs. And I think the moment of faith for us is when we give them, and I watched this happen the other day, they give them to little 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds and say, carry it out to your car. And that is faith journey. I'm just telling you, from the doors of Shepherd to the car seat of that car to make sure. And so far, I haven't. Jane, has any of them dropped? Now I am sure now we're going to have scrambled eggs all week. But the kids are so excited, and they're holding them all different ways, and you're trying to get them to hold. But we want to help increase their access to protein. We know that protein is very important, particularly in the development of the kid's life. And so we want to deal with the holistic part of that person. We want to deal with the academic, emotional, physical, spiritual. 4 different things. Build on a foundation of Jesus Christ. We want to address that. And I want to just tell you a quick story. How many of you know what a stepladder is? Stepladder has how many legs? 4. If it doesn't, I wouldn't use it. But being politically correct, Pastor, I'm tool challenged, which means I can't fix anything. And so generally, if I'm going to fix something at the house, my kids, when they were younger, would go ahead and call 911 and have them ready to fix me, and Jane would call someone to fix what I fixed. And I thought it was simple. I was going to fix the gutters. And so I get on the ladder and I go up, and I only had about that much further to go. It says something on the top of a stepladder. They mean that. But I only had that much further to go. Why would I just not go ahead and step on that and finish cleaning the gutters? And I did, and the mulch moved. Now I forgot to tell you this. My wife asked me, do you want me to hold the ladder? And I told her, no. So the mulch moves, the ladder moves, and I move. But we don't move together. And I fall, and as I fall, my left arm is out, and it lands on top of the stepladder. And at that point, I feel like I've just destroyed my shoulder. And then I go to fall, and I do the genius thing. I grab the stepladder. Now I have a head start. And so I land, and then it comes across my face, and now I have blood coming from my nose. I feel like my shoulders exploded, and I thought, should I go get Jane? And then I thought, I'll just lay here and die. And our daughter, Jenna, looks out, our middle one, she looks out and she says, Mommy, why is Daddy laying on the yard? And so Jane came out, she said, do you need me to hold the ladder? And of course, me and my arrogance, right? Well, that's the unfortunate reality of so many in our neighborhood. Is without a foundation in Jesus Christ and without a holistic way to help them academically, emotionally, physically, spiritually, it doesn't work. And so if we could take just a quick journey, I want to take us through this journey, and we're going to look in the book of John 4. I'm just going to talk about it. But Christ calls us to compassion. He calls us to a lifestyle. It's the natural outpouring of our holiness. That who we are and our theology compels us to care for others. And the compassion of Christ, as seen in John 4, is a very interesting one. Because what we see is John is telling us the story of Jesus. And so it begins in the beginning of the chapter. It says they had to go. And just so you know, a little history here, Jews didn't go to Samaria. That was a forbidden place. Matter of fact, they were half-breeds and they were despised. So you can imagine that the disciples were whispering to Jesus, we're not supposed to go here. I don't know if you know this. I know you're the Son of God, but you may need my help, Jesus. We don't go here. And he goes, no, this is where I'm going. And a very key part of understanding the compassion of Christ is to understand the going. God calls us to go. And so he goes to this place that's forbidden, and then he does something scandalous. He begins to talk to this woman at the well. And so I imagine the disciples are back again whispering to him, "You're not supposed to talk to her, and there's a reason why she's here." And so he begins a conversation, and he says to her, "I would not recommend trying this at Starbucks. This is not an evangelistic tool you want to try." He says, "Yeah, I understand you're living with someone, and you've been married multiple times." Compassion? What was Jesus doing? You know, in my neighborhood, they'd say, "You're in my business." But it was very compassionate. Because what Jesus said to her is, "I love you and I care for you." But there are many of us stuck in churches today that think we have to live this facade because we always fear, because the deceiver's whispering in our ears, if they really knew you, they wouldn't love you. If they really got to know you and knew how broken you are. And what Jesus was doing is he was saying, "I know exactly how broken you are, and I love you." God calls us to love broken people. And he demonstrates that. And it tells us that she ran back to town and said, "This guy has told me everything about me," and many came and believed. If we want to change communities, it starts with us living the compassion of Christ out. Well, in the next chapter, we see John 5, a very different version of compassion. Jesus comes up to a guy who's at the pool, and the story of the day is, if the first person that gets in the water after it sort of has ripples, they get healed. And so, have you ever had Eeyore in your life? You ever had an Eeyore in your life? I imagine this guy's voice sounded like Eeyore. So Jesus says, "Do you want to get better?" And he says something along the lines of, "I never can get in there. Someone always beats me. I've been here all these years, 30-some years, but I never can get in the water." And Jesus said, "That's not what I ask you. You want to get better." And the guy's continuing to tell him, and one of the things that I know Jane and I have learned in all of the years of working in inner cities, we can't help someone who doesn't want to help themselves. But Jesus does something very remarkable here. He says, "Pick up your mat and go be healed." Really? It's a little different. It's a little different from John 4, isn't it? And so this interesting thing that he tells him to carry his mat. Now, this is a desert area. I got to think that mat smells. I don't think there's enough Febreze in the world that makes you want to carry that mat with you. But Jesus said, "Take the mat with you." And I think what he wants to remind him, and maybe remind us today, is that in his compassion, he's done amazing things for us. And sometimes we forget them, right? We forget that beautiful moment when he did an amazing thing in our life. And so he says, "Remember, take that mat with you, be healed." And then it says later in John 5, he says sometime later, Jesus sought him out and said, "Stop sinning." And so, compassion, how does it fit? We see in one moment he's over here delving right into the personal nature of that sin of that lady's life, and over here he's just saying get better, and then later he says you need to stop sinning. And then there's this Mark 5, and Mark 5 is one that has really interested me. The disciples, he's preaching, and so they get on a boat, and finally they're excited, man, he's doing amazing things, right? And so they say, "Jesus, where are we going?" He says, "We're going across the lake over there to that cemetery." He says, "Jesus, you don't know, but Jews don't go to cemeteries." He said, "No, that's where we're going." And they said, "But there's a crazy man there. He's naked. They runs around and they put all these things on him." And Jesus says, that's exactly who I'm going to. And that day was an amazing day for that man that society would have said is one of those people, right? Those people. That's who Jesus came for. And he went across the lake to that person. And he changed his life. It was an amazing day for him. It was a horrible day for the swine industry. But Jesus went for the one. And so we see that this idea of compassion is I'm going, I'm serving broken people, I'm going to forbidden places, and I'm not worried about world's metrics. I'm worried about kingdom metrics. It was worth Jesus' time to go across the lake for one person. And finally, I look at the story of Lazarus. And Jesus goes and he brings him out of the tomb, right? He raised him from the dead. But what do we know about Lazarus? He died again. Yep. He's like a yo-yo, in the tomb, out, back in. So, and everyone that Jesus healed died. So why did he heal them? Why did he bring Lazarus out of it? He was just going to die again. And here's what I think. I think Christian compassion is about us going and connecting and holistically meeting the needs, but it's to give glory to the Father, because as he's going over to Lazarus, he says, so the Father may be glorified, but it's for us to connect to broken people. We're all Legos created for connection. Different sizes, different shapes, different colors. But God created us to connect to Him and to connect to others. Every Lego piece does that. So the question for us is, will we live a life of compassion, connected to God and connected to other people?